It is 5:31. I'd like to call to order the a special meeting of the Urbana Human Relations Commission on Tuesday, November 16th. Can we have a roll call, please?
Carol Bradford, Stacy Burnett, Asako Kanazi Leggett,
Here.
Peter Resnick,
Here.
Francis Rigberg,
Here.
Julie Robinson Schaefer.
Here.
And Tamara, Stacy is here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Stacy Burnett.
Yes. So we have a quorum. We are meeting by Zoom due to the governor and mayoral emergency orders. The Urbana City Council chambers, where I am right now, will not be open to the public during this meeting. For those wishing to provide public input, please follow the instructions provided on the published agenda on how to provide public input. Anyone can watch the meeting on streaming devices, UPTV, or attend virtually via Zoom webinar. Okay. We will next have approval of our agenda for this evening.
I'll move approval.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Peter's moved in, Osco second. Approval of our agenda for this evening. Is there any discussion? Okay, let's have a roll call vote.
Stacy Burnett.
Here.
Asako Kanazi Leggett,
Here. Yes.
Peter Resnick,
Yes.
Francis Rigberg,
Yes.
Julie Robinson Schaefer.
Yes.
Okay, that we have the approved agenda. I'm going to check for public input this evening for hands raised. I don't think we have any people attending tonight. Okay, so we will go directly to our unfinished business, which consists of the EEO workforce statistics for 3 firms. And I think the very interesting thing about this evening is that these are, as I understand it, these are the firms competing for a city contract to build some new firehouses. And the contract has not been granted yet. So we are actually looking at their EEO statistics at a time that it might matter and impact. We're actually having a little impact before the contract is granted. And I think that's very desirable. So bear that in mind as we look at these tonight. We have 3, Williams, which seems to have some subcontractors. 3 companies, BKV and FGMA or FGM Architects. Carla has been good enough to give us a little summary of these folks' data. And also Tamara has given us the usual helpful spreadsheet. Would anybody like to comment on this or propose an initial set of approvals so we can just get the discussion started? I would like to simply point out something interesting I found in the BKV proposal. As in their appendix, I can get to that, where they have their EEO commitment. One of the protected classes that they list is being a member of a Human Relations Commission or Human Rights Commission. I thought was kind of unusual. Yes. they will not discriminate or harass anyone who, on basis of marital status, etc., or activity in a local human rights commission. Pete, have you ever seen that before?
That is the first time I've ever heard of such a.
We're protected.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, it's interesting. I also noticed that one of the Williams subcontractors, but not one that is giving contributing people to this project, is a women or minority owned business. They have also been approved by us before for 1 year, I believe. It's going to come to its end in January.
So, at least to get the discussion started, I'll make a motion to approve each of the three of them for 1 year.
Okay.
Second that motion.
With the letter.
Okay.
Yeah, I would second that.
Okay. Do we have it? No, let's discuss that.
And I'll say for myself, I mean, the numbers range from, mediocre to terrible on all three.
Mhm.
And maybe this is a question for Carla. I mean, is our input to the selection process useful? Should we include some comments to the city to, our feelings about these particular states of affairs, or is this just going to go into the hopper as usual? If we're going down the path of just one of these three is going to be selected, but our input is not going to be meaningful at the city level, then it's not going to be too much of an impact.
Well, I can't answer that to the affirmative because I believe that you should provide the city with your comments and what you think, based upon what your reading is of the three. I don't know what the impact will be because we've never been in this space, and I've definitely never been in this space. My belief is that it will have an impact, that it will help with the deciding, that you may agree with what they may be thinking. So but I believe it should be, move forward regardless, because I think every one of your opinions is important.
Yep, fair enough. So, I don't, given how we treat numbers like this for other companies, with the exception of Williams, who, at least on the surface for their employees, I mean, they're large enough that we would go through this, but we would, I think in the case of Williams, come back to them with these numbers and say, what are you doing to improve these numbers? Before we would make a decision normally. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, May I kind of anticipated that question. And so I went and looked, because I've always heard that, architecture in general is low in the diversity numbers nationwide. And so I went and looked. And so I looked at their national numbers, and some of the businesses are better than what the national numbers are. Of course, in Champaign County, the numbers are not, they're a little different. But when you look at the architecture industry as a whole, some of the numbers are close, but there's not a whole lot of diversity in the architecture profession in general. I did find the National Organization of Minority Architects, and I read some of their literature, and they talked about that they are working towards diversifying the profession, but it is moving slowly. It's just there's not a lot of diversity going into the profession, and they're trying to work to change that. But they said it is going slowly. But there is hope in Atlanta, Georgia.
Sometimes
that they're seeing some movement in Atlanta, Georgia. Because I kind of figured that would be. So I'm like, I just wanted to see how these fared with the national numbers. And then I also looked at Itasca and where they're situated, and their numbers are pretty consistent with the national numbers.
So you're saying with Williams being 100% Caucasian with 29 employees, that's considered satisfactory because Itasca?
It's not considered satisfactory. I can understand looking at the profession as a whole, attracting.
Considering this company is 25 minutes from downtown downtown Chicago area.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still consistent?
I think it's, I'm not in the architecture profession, but from what I looked at today, it would almost be, you would find that in other areas, even though they're close to a large community. Unfortunately, they said most of the architects are concentrated in the New York, DC area.
I'd like to point out that they have chosen to be in that community, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I look at these three, I look at what Carla gave us in particular, and at who they're actually sending to work on this. And I think there's quite a contrast in desirability from our perspective, which we're kind of limiting to their diversity, because that's our job and our mission. So I look at them and I say, BVK, you're doing okay. And I look at Williams and I think, no, doing kind of okay with the women, but otherwise not so good. And FGM kind of mediocre. But they're not sending any minority to ours. And I'm wondering why it's such a small number assigned to the whole project. So that strikes me as a little funny. Pete?
Yeah, I mean, so BKV at the very least has a more extensive equal employment opportunity statement where they have given a specific that they are going, what they are doing to try and improve things here. They have appointed someone to manage a program and blah, 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 which the other two have not. With regard to number of people, my impression, and I don't know if Carla, specifically, but my impression was these are architecture firms. And so it may be that they just have a few architects to design the firehouses in question, but not the builders. Because even if I take a look at Williams, their subcontractors, they have Burns Clancy, which is the the surveyor, for surveying the land areas. I think that's who that's who these folks are bringing in, is folks to sort of do the plans, do the layout, and meet those requirements. So a small number might not be that surprising. But again, at least BKV has something to say about this. Williams has not a word to say about it. They have no affirmative action plan described. They simply say we will, give equal opportunity, not discriminate. They're not showing any attempt to change what's going on. Carla, I take it this is happening quickly, which is why we're having the special meeting, right?
Yeah, they had been working on it for about 2 months. It was my fault that you didn't get it last week, and so that's why I'm in a rush, because they wanted to have it done so they can start making decisions this week.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, Carla, that it would communicate what we might want to communicate, to simply give different lengths of approval for these three, like give one 2 years, one 6 months? Would that communicate it, or do we want to say more? And how would we do that, do you think?
I'm sorry, you froze.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do we want to do more than just communicate through the length of approval we give? And how would we do that? Would we do that through you? Or me?
We can
or-
do, you can, whatever approval you provide, as we've done before, if you give us a directive that you want it, what language you want it in a letter, we could do that.
But the information needs to get to the people who are taking everything into consideration. Right.
Well, when we're done today, I would send an email.
Okay, great. Okay.
So I would not be opposed. I mean, my motion on the table notwithstanding, I would not be opposed to someone making a friendly amendment to change Williams to 6 months, and making it quite clear that we're approving this for 6 months, but that we want to see within 6 months, which would be before the contract really gets going, as far as I can tell, we would want to see some good faith effort at, instituting hiring practices. And because if they don't provide that within 6 months, at that point, it would come back to us anyway, because I assume their contract will last longer than 6 months. And then we have the threat of saying, look, we can, if you don't provide that stuff, that will constitute under Section 2119, a breach of the contract, and that contract could be terminated if you don't. So, I mean, that puts them on notice that we're looking for the information. It also puts the city on notice that if they go with Williams as their contractor, in 6 months, the HRC is going to want to see them say something appropriately, or there could be a problem with the contract going forward. So the city is also kind of on notice that there's an issue.
So I would be willing to make that amendment, but I also have a question
If you're
because
frozen again.
Did others miss, or is Carla? Okay.
Am I the only one freezing up?
maybe
Possibly.
Okay.
I caught everything Pete said because I'm willing to make the amendment to only approve Williams for 6 months, but I have a question related to the contract process. This is near and dear to my heart. It's what I do every day. So within the contract, I guess, can we make a recommendation as a commission to the city to say they must abide by the, human rights ordinances or whatever? I guess something to tie them back to, hey, we need to see good faith efforts on hiring practices that don't reflect completely white employment force or whatever. That's not acceptable in this day and age, in my opinion. So I guess that I would be curious what we could recommend goes in the contract, understanding, of course, we have no direct negotiation of those terms.
So let me say this. I think this is sort of going to be a weird little dance here.
Mhm.
As far as the ordinance is concerned, we get to review the contracts, right? And review the numbers, more to the point, review the numbers associated with the contracts. And if we decide that they have not taken appropriate steps, we can, as a commission, declare that they have not taken appropriate steps, at which point that in and of itself, according to the ordinance, constitutes a breach of contract. Now, we are now making that statement that in 6 months, we're going to want to see this back and we're going to review it again. It seems like if we make that clear to whoever's writing the contract on the part of the city, that we're going to review this in 6 months, that they might want to add some language to the contract to make that clear to the contractor. But the sheer act of us saying this isn't meeting it is in itself just by ordinance a breach of contract.
Okay, that's good to know. And yeah, I mean, it's nice to know that we have some sway here, because obviously the purpose of our commission is to ensure equal access to all of this and not have anything be discriminatory or perceived as discriminatory in any way. So
So I have a question.
I'm sorry. Yes, Stacy, go ahead.
So the pool of architectures that these three were chosen from the pool, say there was 10 and these three were chosen. And so now we're narrowing it down to the one who will be awarded. Is this correct?
We aren't, but the city,
Okay.
yes.
The city.
Yeah.
So
City is, yes.
I believe what maybe Julie was, I thought she was referring to is in advance, the city chose businesses that are already diverse, and then we narrow it down to the one from that pool. Williams wouldn't have been on the board to begin, for us to approve.
That's probably true.
So is there something that can be done in advance or?
Well, I think that part of this process that is kind of unusual for us, but a good opportunity, is the educational aspect of it for the city. I think often they do not think about this.
Okay.
I think that's become apparent recently. And I think that they need to become more aware of it and the power that is in the ordinance. I was even thinking when I was looking at these numbers, that we could even say someone doesn't get any approval at all if they were so bad. I'm not saying that applies to anyone here, any of these here, but it could, and that would knock them out of contention for the contract. And that's the city needs to be aware of that.
So
Kind of
I
thing,
guess-
our role in it. Yeah.
I have a follow-up question then, and we may not know the answer to this. Maybe Carla does. I'm guessing the city wrote the RFP, the request for proposal that they're responding to, because as I was reading through, I saw in the packets they've all responded to the RFP. So it would be interesting to know what was in the RFP related to non-discrimination and hiring practices and that kind of stuff, because really that's the point we would need to really insert ourselves if we wanted to be proactive, is within that RFP review process. That's where the city could potentially, I don't know who reviews these, use or benefit from some additional education that, I'm heavily involved in processes like this as my day-to-day job. And you can't look at numbers alone of, when you have to look at the holistic picture of what's being proposed. So that's my 2 cents. This is making me feel like I'm at work a little bit.
No, that's
But I
why
at least feel like I'm on more solid ground now.
No,
Did
we
you
need you. This is
want
great.
me to respond to that? Because I
Yeah.
don't know what's in the contracts. Again, this is a unique situation where we were sent everything. So as I was reviewing it, I was looking at it. There are a couple in there that that have the RFP. I'm not sure the language of the actual contract.
Well, I'm not asking for the language of the actual contract, the actual RFP, the solicitation that went out for bids that they are now responding to. That's what I was looking for.
Okay.
Is, that's really the point that we could do the most good of being able to have some sort of terms in there that, hey, please be advised, you would need to meet the requirements of human rights ordinance, whatever, if that's the case, in order to be awarded a contract with the city of Urbana. Put them on notice, make them look up our ordinance and figure out, oh, well, we don't meet this. Maybe we need to look at our practices a little closer. Maybe it won't matter. I know that we're not, the city needs services to be performed and they need to contract with people, and we can't hold it up for that. But this is an opportunity in my mind to be able to proactively notify and maybe get some more action. I don't know.
I know the EEO is a part of that, but I can bring this conversation forward and ask.
Okay, Pete?
Yeah, I think what's tripped us up here and made this longer than just the 15-minute meeting we were looking for.
Sorry.
No worries. This is a good conversation. Is that we happen to get in early in this process, which we usually don't. And I think it's pointing to maybe a conversation that should be ongoing and not specific to these three contractors, which I think is what Julie was pointing to. But I also don't want to veer too much off of our regular procedure, because that can get us in a bit of hot water. That we should review this the way we would review any other submission of EEO workforce statistics. But I think we have the opportunity on the side to say to the city, look, for instance, if we decided, normally with something like Williams, we would do one of two things. We would do 6 months and a letter saying, we're going to want to see something within 6 months as a showing of good faith efforts. Or we would say, perhaps you would like to amend your EEO statement with some information about the good faith efforts you're already taking. And so I think we should choose one of those paths. I think choosing the second of those paths, if we ask for more information before any kind of approval, might cause some hiccups in the bid process here, which would be interesting. But I think we should at least, after having done that, say to the city, look, what we're telling you is we're going to see this again before this contract is up. And perhaps you want to get us involved in the bidding process when it's a big bid like this beforehand, instead of, like at the RFP level, put in some language, get some stuff to us so that we can get that information back to you. And maybe it can be part of the scoring system or whatever it is. But I think at this point, we don't want to shift too much from the process for these folks, because that could get us in legal hot water. At this point, we do sort of the two steps. We say, this is what we are going to approve or not approve in this meeting, and then separately have Carla communicate with staff about how maybe we can improve the process in the future.
I agree, Pete, and I kind of took us off on a tangent, so I apologize. I think that this would be a good conversation, like you said, to have on the side for future. But yes, you are absolutely correct that at this point in time for these three vendors, we need to look at the process as we would normally. So I apologize for taking us down that.
I apologize.
It's a conversation we haven't had to date, and so I think it's important to get it, especially since we had this opportunity to get it on the agenda for the future. So much appreciated. No apology necessary.
That's right. And I think that we have different focuses in different years, but the overall thing is to get more visibility in the community and in the city, so that unfortunate acts of discrimination are less likely to occur. And that only can happen if we have more awareness everywhere. So thank you. I think this is a great discussion. So we have our it has been moved and seconded and in a friendly way friendly amended.
Has it officially been amended to 6 months?
Has it?
I will officially make the request to amend Williams to 6 months, definitely with a letter though.
And I'll take that as a friendly amendment. That's fine.
Okay. Do we need a second for that? I can't recall.
You just need agreement by the
By the original mover.
and the second.
Okay. Would anybody like to make any other changes to it's been 1 year for each, and now it's 6 months for Williams and 1 year for each of the following. That's what we're going to be voting on. Would anybody like to say anything else about it? Okay, let's have a roll call vote.
Stacy Burnett,
Yes.
Asako Kanazi Leggett,
Yes.
Peter Resnick,
Yes.
Francis Rigberg,
Yes.
Julie Robinson Schaefer.
Yes.
That's it. We passed it, and it's only 6 o'clock. Not too terrible. Okay. Okay, thank you all. Oh, wait a minute. Let me check the agenda here. Don't want to be remiss. No, next on the agenda is adjournment. So have a great weekend. Great Thanksgiving. Carla, did you want to say something? Your hand is up.
I did. I was trying to catch it before you said
Yeah,
adjournment.
yeah, yeah. No, no.
I had to find it. As far as the letter, is there specific language you would like for me to include, or do you want me to just come up with something expressing your sentiments
For the contractor or for the
for the contract letters?
for the contractor, I think we have a standard letter which says something along the lines of we want to see a good faith effort or something
6
like
months.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, so use the letter that we typically use. You didn't want to add anything to it. Okay, that's all I needed.
I believe that.
Want to put in some warning, that it is only approved for 6 months and therefore will be back in front of the commission if that's not already in the letter, but
Mhm.
I think it might be.
I think I can't remember, but I just wanted to make sure that
Okay.
I captured what you wanted.
Okay, good. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. Thanks so much.